We'll see if things actually get released to the public this year, because that's a hefty promise to make and not keep. And I would argue there are millions, if not tens of millions of people that are like actually waiting for these promises to be kept, who are going to either have a really difficult time rationalizing why these things aren't released, or it's a purposeful creation of a schism.
Let's get to some news from the past week. We have the OKeefe Media Group with an IRS whistleblower. He's a tax examiner, and he blows the whistle on the agency, reveals, well, we're going to wait and see. Next, Donald Trump, he's looking to end taxes. So if you make less than $150,000 a year, you would not have to pay any income tax. And that sounds like a great idea that could benefit most everybody I know. Let's check it out, see if there's any reality to it. And then we do have a clip. It's a little bit longer, but I think if you apply your attention and patience, this will pay off for the rest of your life. Because what I'm talking about is the taxation is theft motif is an idea that's very popular, but very often has little historical backup for it. So if someone doesn't immediately agree with you, what's the step-by-step order of things that happen in history to bring about the thing we have today? And then when you can see that's a bunch of nonsense and BS, now I'm ready to entertain, maybe this isn't the way we should be funding our country or putting ourselves in $35 trillion of debt or whatever, right? So in the realm of education, Jake Tran has been a young producer who found his stride being able to take controversial topics and do some research and marshal that research and do that consistently. So consistently, he has calls to action and sponsors and things like that Colby's going to watch out for, because they're not paying us. So I just want to share the brilliance of Jake Tran. I want to point you toward his YouTube productions, etc. I also want you to understand the history of taxation, which might be theft. I'll leave it to you to decide that, in this country since its origins, since the American Revolution, and what it means today to have these ideas being floated, that maybe we can make it go away and not leave that legacy of infernal debt to our future generations. I think that could be a pathway to freedom, and we're going to have to examine it thoroughly. So this will be a longer block, but we will be right back to discuss in detail. Scott, Paul, and I will take some notes, and we'll bring back some juicy artifacts to share along the way.
Oh, it's a scary thing for people. You can lose your career over doing the right thing.
David Nelson is blowing the whistle on the IRS. He is a tax examining technician at the IRS out of the Covington, Kentucky office, a position that reviews and corrects tax returns. He is concerned about the inefficiencies plaguing the agency and the use of highly outdated technologies which are not integrated. At a time when there are discussions to reform and revamp the IRS, we met David at his home alongside his family, and he took the extraordinary step of going public, going on the record, and blowing the whistle on the outdated system called IRS and what he would do to reform it.
What do you want the American people to know?
We have very antiquated software. We use a software called Integrated Data Retrieval System.
IRS.
IRS.
It dates back to when?
Late 1960s. This tells you about IRS, when it was first implemented, when it was implemented throughout all the service sites.
1969. That's when they put the man on the moon. And how do you think this system affects the IRS's efficiency?
A ton. We can't do anywhere close to what the American people think. The whole U.S. tax system being built on a program that was created in the late 1960s. That's absurd. It's command code driven.
Command code consists of low-level instructions for operating computers, and it is deemed outdated because of the emergence of higher-level programming languages that improve productivity and usability. It is similar to MS-DOS, which is so antiquated that it hasn't been widely utilized in our education system for decades.
You could think of like MS-DOS, but older. That's probably the most relevant thing that people could think of. We could probably reduce the size of the IRS substantially with changes. Programs, a centralized inventory system, replacing IRS.
This is your suggestion.
In light of the IRS drafting plans to cut its workforce by as much as half through a mix of layoffs, attrition, and incentivized buyouts, David has solutions on how to reform the IRS.
Breaking: President Trump is now seeking to eliminate all taxes for Americans earning less than $150,000 a year. Let's hear what Commerce Senator Lutnick said.
Is to have external revenue. You know, the way I think about it, we all are so used to paying taxes. We're so used to it. We have like Stockholm syndrome. You know, don't stop the Internal Revenue Service, God forbid. How about this? The rest of the world leans on our economy, breathes off our economy.
Correct.
Not only is our economy $29 trillion GDP, but we consume $20 trillion a year. We are the buyer of everybody's stuff.
Correct.
We buy everybody's stuff. So who's more important? The people who sell stuff or the people who buy stuff? So we are the buyer of everybody's commodities, products, goods and services. Everything comes from us, right? Let them pay a membership fee. We all understand that model. Let them pay. How about we, you and I, and every single person we know pay less? How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal.
Could you imagine?
Will Trump lower income taxes to zero? He has hinted at it before, but I wouldn't hold my breath on it. And on top of that, even if he does lower income taxes, which he probably will, again, the genie is out of the bottle. And once he leaves office, they're definitely gonna keep raising taxes again and raise spending again. And that is why you can't rely on Trump or some other politician to save the day, because the only long-term solution is to take your fate into your own hands. And to do that, you gotta understand how the tax game works. Because make no mistake, it is a game. Because at the end of the day, the politicians may have been the ones that passed the tax laws, but those politicians have to answer to their donors, also known as the rich. See, there's a reason why Trump famously said that he's smart for not paying taxes.
Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So
that makes
if
me
he's
smart.
It's because although the rich can't stop every tax on them from going into law, they do get to play a hand in how the tax code is written, and they make sure to include every single loophole possible for themselves.
She complains that Donald Trump took advantage of the tax code. Well, why didn't she change it? Why didn't you change it when you were a senator? The reason you didn't is that all your friends take the same advantage that I do, and I do. You have provisions in the tax code that frankly we could change, but you wouldn't change it because all of these people give you the money so you can take negative ads on Donald Trump.
Heck, just look at Trump's massive tax cuts back in 2017. Back in 2017, the top 1% of Americans got a juicy $60,000 cut from their taxes on average, while the middle class, they got a measly $500 in tax cuts. This is why although the rich do technically have the highest tax rates, the ones that always get hammered the most are the middle class. As you saw earlier, most of the money the government collects is from the income tax. And guess who gets hit hardest by the income tax? On the surface, it may seem like the rich get hit the hardest, since they have the highest income tax rates. But here is the reality: the rich usually don't make that much income. The rich are usually business owners and investors, not employees, which means they don't make most of their money from their salary. Elon Musk famously has a $0 salary from Tesla. Jack Dorsey has had a $0 salary for years. Mark Zuckerberg has a $1 salary, and Larry Page and Sergey Brin has also had a $1 salary for many years as they were running Google. Why? Because salaries are hit with the dreaded payroll tax, and then you also owe income tax on it as well. Not exactly conducive to building wealth. So instead of salaries, they get paid in stock, options, dividends, their businesses grow in value, their investments generate cash for them, all of which is taxed at a much lower rate. And when you have businesses and assets, you can even borrow money against your business as a loan. And the great thing about this is you get the cash. Since it's your business, you get to determine the interest rate for it. And guess what? You don't have to pay any tax on this cash since it's a quote-unquote loan. This is what all of America's richest elite do to get billions in cash without paying any tax and without having to sell their stock in their companies. And this is why getting paid for your labor is a losing game, whether you're working at McDonald's or you're a highly paid professional like a doctor. Because not only is getting paid by your labor limited by you working, but it also guarantees that the tax man is going to bend you over and screw you.
I mean, the gist is you can hope that Trump's going to do something and take away your taxes, or you can go raise your skills and learn how to be more buoyant in the current environment. Because if you don't know how to do that, then it can get real dicey. I did want to pick up on a theme he dropped toward the end of the video before that thread got lost, and it had to do with the Pentagon Accounting, which he said at present day has failed its audit 6 times. I wanted to point back to something that happened not so long ago about Pentagon Accounting, tragically on 9/11. The accountants that were trying to put together the Pentagon budget, they all died. Army History Unit, piecing together accounts of Pentagon attack by Milan Simonich, December 16, 2001, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And if you were to click the link, you would see that you're not allowed to view that anymore over on Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Now, for whatever reason, they're not carrying their very important article, so I did search it, and then I did get the original link, and I did already go to the Wayback Machine. So we can learn a little something about it. Now, we're going to search, we're going to hit Control F here, and we're going to hit Accountants. Oh, look. One Army office in the Pentagon lost 34 of its 65 employees in the attack. Most of those killed in the office, called Resource Services Washington, were civilian accountants, bookkeepers, and budget analysts. They were at their desks when American Airlines Flight 77 struck the building. So the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld came out and said, we cannot track $2.3 trillion accounting for the Pentagon. You don't do press releases with bad news. That's bad news, by the way, that they lost $2.3 trillion. They don't know what happened to it. You do that on a Friday before the weekend. Everyone forgets about it. You do it on a Monday, people are going to be talking about that all week. It's going to be a major news story unless you're on the deep state side of things and you know there's a thing coming on Tuesday that's going to wipe everyone's memory of anything Rumsfeld said on Monday. And later, a courageous congresswoman from Georgia named Cynthia McKinney, she questioned Rumsfeld and General Myers in front of Congress. And it's a famous video that's also censored on YouTube. It's called McKinney Grills. That's what you would have to just type in to find it. Cynthia McKinney Grills Rumsfeld. And in there, she not only brings up the $2.3 trillion missing, she brings up things like United States military contractor DynCorp, sexual abuse, human trafficking allegations. DynCorp, by the way, was owned at that time by Computer Sciences Corporation, a client of mine. So that's where I picked up on that. Congresswoman knows what's going on, and I hope she's careful. And soon thereafter, she got set up and had a whole interaction with Capitol Police, and they made her persona non grata and got her out of Congress because you can't have people noticing. The Israeli connections to 9/11, the budget missing stuff, the overlap of deep state military industrial complex, and some insurance companies and banks that had a much greater benefit and key bono scenario than anybody who had grown up overseas and might have been fighting out of a cave or something like that. Those cartoonish narratives were purveyed by the people who attacked you and took your freedom and continue this day to hold some of that. Scott found that McKinney Grills clip, so we're going to include that because it does fit in with the fact that accountants trying to piece together all this missing money were in a newly renovated, fortified against bombs section of the Pentagon, which just happened to blow up that day, with the official story saying that Flight 77 flew faster than the airframe could manage, did a turn that no pilot could manage, came in on the ground and hit at this angle and caused this damage. However, the initial damage to that building does not show that. And they artificially did a demolition of part of the Pentagon, and there's a whole slice in the wall and everything caves in. And there's a lot of scrutiny about how did chaos create such clean, it looked like they cut a cake. It just right down the wall. There's a book on a stool. It's not even disturbed. Something happened there other than what they claim. To this day, has not yet been adjudicated. So with all that being laid out, I'll leave it to my co-host to pick up any pieces that I might have missed. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, 9/11 was just one of those never let a good crisis go to waste type situations. I mean, you can also look at World Trade Center, Tower 7, and all of the offices that were there. You have like CIA, Secret Service, Securities Exchange Commission, all these things that it's like, hey, we just want to make all this stuff disappear, guys. Poof. And even, even if the stuff that they wanted disappeared wasn't even housed in those things, it could be a perfect excuse to say, oh, sorry, we lost that. It was lost in 9/11. It's just like this perfect culmination of all the plans to be executed, not to mention all the ramifications that occurred afterwards. It's just, yeah. And then if you look at the Pentagon on that day, they've never released the footage.
There's 90 cameras. So, because I have that history, let me just share it. There was a group, I'm trying to remember the group. There's various groups. There's pilots for 9/11 Truth. These are commercial airline pilots who had questions. There's firefighters for 9/11 Truth, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And there was a group around DC. I'm trying to remember the name. Maybe it'll come to me. But anyway, their whole thing was collecting all the CCTV footage from all the stuff. And there's 90 identified cameras that would have covered that. And all they did is, after many years, now a whole bunch of wait till later, Epstein type of stuff, they showed like 2 frames from 2 different cameras at the same kind of like parking security area. And people can jump to a conclusion and say, that is Flight 77. And I would say, can you identify the tail number on that? Do you have serial number pieces that match that plane? Did the transponder not turn off over a military base called Stewart Air Force Base along with the other hijacked plane? They fly over, transponders turn off. A couple minutes later, transponders turn back on. I don't know where the plane's, I don't know. And if you haven't asked the questions to find out the answers to those questions of basic identification of what exists, then you have done a whole lot of assuming, and you need to clear the board and start putting on only things that are evidence that can be verified and validated by other people. Otherwise, it's a bunch of nonsense, just like the official story. But please continue.
Well, then just kind of paint the whole picture here. I mean, a lot of the audience obviously knows about this stuff, but it's like, and another corollary is like you have Donald Rumsfeld, who was the day before making that proclamation about all this missing money. And then if you look, there's footage of him after the Pentagon got hit. He's like running around in the lawn, like picking up pieces of debris and stuff.
Or putting down, because there's still photos.
Putting down. Yeah,
you don't know if he's picking up or putting down, but if it's evidence, look, there's people to be saved. There's people dying right then. Why is Rumsfeld on the lawn with plain parts in his hand? That's just a good place to start. Who is Rumsfeld? Did he work for G.D. Searle and bring aspartame to the world? Did he work for Team B along with Wolfowitz and a whole bunch of other proto-neocons back in the 70s under the Gerald Ford administration? And Ford was on the Warren Commission and later became the unelected president with Nelson Rockefeller as vice president. There's a whole lot of deep statingness right there. And those people all stood to benefit from the assassination and cover-up of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Bobby Kennedy Sr. So long, dark history being exposed, but not necessarily by they, them, those.
Exactly. And if you're the Secretary of Defense, and this is 9/11 is what 9/11 is. Like, your country's under attack. You're not out running around. You're like in the Situation Room with the president or something, right? I would assume. I don't know. It's very suspicious. Very suspicious. We're not being told the truth is what I'm trying to get at.
At least 9/11 wasn't a catalyzing catastrophic event like a new Pearl Harbor that would bring into effect all of the things listed out in a document called Project for the New American Century, because that would be quite a coincidence if it just happened to line up with all those objectives. So thankfully, nobody wrote a document like that later got into power once George W. Bush got elected, and everything is good. But 9/11 is kind of that keyhole event, right? Through which so many people who initially bought the official story suddenly came to realize things didn't add up, and it started opening so many other doors of thought, so many rabbit holes of discovery. And it all comes back to that. Everything that we're facing today with the whole idea of the jihadis, and we got to watch out, it really comes back to 9/11, and that being the most powerful public snuff film to socially program everyone at once by traumatizing them. And the echoes of that just continue on. And it's like the JFK files. They're like, as long as we don't answer the questions, people will endlessly speculate and invest their time and will only drip the answers. And I really see it, not just the event itself, but all the purposeful non-answering and non-satisfying resolution is meant to not only reinflict the trauma, but get people to invest their time in speculating so that they can create this whole industry that they dismiss. Oh, you conspiracy theorists with your wild ideas. Only we know the truth. So it allows them to gatekeep and keep their sort of priesthood. And so, yeah, we'll see if things actually get released to the public this year, because that's a hefty promise to make and not keep. And I would argue there are millions, if not tens of millions of people that are like actually waiting for these promises to be kept, who are going to either have a really difficult time rationalizing why these things aren't released, or it's a purposeful creation of a schism in the conspiracy community between the Trump supporters who are blindly like, oh, there's a reason he didn't release this stuff, and the actual people who want the truth.
Yep, it's such a good point. The fact that they just leave so much up for speculation for us to just spin our wheels about endlessly, this or that. It was a plane, direct energy weapons, but also another thing to keep an eye out for with all these events is they try so hard to just lock in a narrative right away. Just immediately, like, this is the narrative, and then therefore, if you deviate from what this narrative is in any way, shape, or form, then you're a conspiracy theorist. So that creates the guardrails by which you are allowed to speculate, but then anything outside of that, it's like you have the people on the ground. What was that one? The one guy that was on the ground, and he has like his handler behind him, and he's like, he makes some statement that's like, oh yeah, it was definitely like a bunch of Middle Eastern terrorists or something like that, like on the ground. You know what I'm talking about? That one. Anyway.
Well, there's a little history real quick, because there was the Katsenbach Memo to Bill Moyers, November 26, 1963. This sets the official story for the lone gunman. And if you ask the question, who's Nicholas Katzenbach and what's he doing up on Sunday night writing this memo? Oh, he's a Rhodes Scholar. And he was involved in BCCI and a whole bunch of interesting things of the deep state variety going on later. And later we had a Rhodes Scholar president. His name's William Jefferson Clinton. And he looks a lot like Winthrop Rockefeller, who used to be the governor of the state that Bill became governor of, but I'm not here to talk about that. I just wanted to point out the laying out of the facts before people actually had to the chance to adjudicate. There's another one that comes up with 9/11. His name is L. Paul Jerry Bremer. And he, let's go over here. He, before becoming governor of Iraq and losing billions of dollars off of flatbed trucks, just mountains of money he lost, right? Before that, he was the first person to kind of unfold the Osama bin Laden official narrative on the morning of 9/11, right after Alan Greenspan's wife, Judy Woodruff, said Osama bin Laden first. I think that's how it goes. It might not be Judy Woodruff, but Alan Greenspan's wife made the reports that morning. She mentioned Osama bin Laden before Bremer, but Bremer brought the whole like terrorist, neocon situation to it. Now, the interesting part is L. Paul Jerry Bremer in his history worked with Kissinger and Negroponte. He's part of Kissinger Associates, but he also additionally got the Presidential Medal of Freedom and some other stuff. But he managed risk management for Marsh and McLennan, which is a notorious globalist front company, which happened to be where World Trade Center 1 blows up on the morning of 9/11. And Bremer's nowhere there. He's at a TV studio to tell you who did it. So when you follow back who is Marsh and McLennan, you might get back to A Nation Challenge, The Vault Underground Zero. That's a good article. Or where's the other one? The Secret Agent Insurance Men. I might have to go to AIG to find that, because that shows the intelligence connection between insurance and the intelligence agencies that we know and love as like insurance companies or reinsurance companies in the case of Marsh and McLennan. Now, AIG was also founded by Cornelius V. Starr, who prosecuted Bill Clinton later for the whole type of shenanigans in the 90s. So there's an ominous continuity, multi-generational goals being reached by the deep state Renfields. That'd be a good name for them, right? So without understanding these angles, you're left to believe it was, 19 box cutter hijacker type people and they hate America and just go get them and send the military and approve all the taxes and lose your rights and strip down at the airport and take your shoes off because that's freedom. right? So there's more detail, nuance needed to actually get to reality than what most people are getting at the fifth grade educational level, that most content is catered to and accepted in this demoralized state of literacy and active literacy skills out there.
Yeah,
So
and
you
not only
trust and
that,
hope for Trump, or you can learn your way out of it. I'd rather have control and agency rather than hoping that some comic book superhero is going to save the day.
yeah, and you know, one individual who kind of learned his way out of the status quo was a guy named William Cooper. He wrote "Behold the Pale Horse," which, you know, you can take it or leave that book, but he did predict in June of 2001. He said on the record, he's like, whatever they're about to do, that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden. Don't you believe it for a second? So
then they shot that poor man November 5th, 2001.
Exactly, like right
Police
after.
shot him in his front yard.
It's like, you know, he was able to put the pieces together. He understood all this stuff and how it works. And once you have that level of understanding, you can see the world for what it is. And he was to such a degree that he actually called it 3 months before it actually happened. And then it happened, and then he's dead right after that. So crazy stuff.
All right, Colby, I'm going to trigger your complexity so we have the title of this episode covered.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man.